One of my best mates actually caught that fish in January. Fair play, big up Logan.
Last time we were here around this table, there was a lot of chatter about Wateride.
Oz came for a night. Stokesy came for 3 nights, I think, and Spooner and Duffy with it.
It isn't an act, it's not fake with Holmesy. You can't fake it, you can't fake his opinion.
The person I used to interact with on the internet compared to the person that I see them talking to at a carp show is very different.
He might say the same about you.
They probably would. You've got to be in it to win it. If I'm not there, I ain't got a chance.
Do you think then it's almost useless information, or do you think you can use the spawning locations of other fish to help you catch carp? I can picture you losing one at the net and that almost leading to tears.
There you go, time and effort. They're the 2 big things. And time, as we all know in carp fishing, is a very, very, very important aspect, especially on a lake like that.
It's felt to me like the year of the bait boat.
It doesn't feel like a carp show to me, it feels like a fishing show to me.
So a lot of filmmakers would say that's the hardest bit.
I'm a very creative person. That's what I like to do.
Stretching the mono, because you can't fish braid there, was pinging a leg.
Catapult.
Was that a bit of an eye-opener for you?
Why are you here, mate? What are you doing? I was like, I'm working on the quarter stands. He was laughing at me. He's like, no, you're not.
Were you in the scouts or anything like that as a kid?
Nah. But I'm not, like I say, I'm not too fragile. I spent a lot of time outside. What we'll do to start this, I'm going to ask you what you've been doing, because you always ask me and Rich what we've been doing. So what have you been doing?
I've been up to a bit of fishing related stuff. I've been doing a bit for Carpology magazine. I interviewed Mark Holmes last week, and just before that interviewed Holmes. So 2 very different characters.
Very different, yeah.
But yeah, long form interviews for Carpology, which Joe, the editor, kindly allows me to do, which is really good fun. First time I'd met either of them. I'd spoken to both of them over the phone. Both come with a preconception, don't they? When you think of Oz, you think of a storyteller and a man who's got a really good way with words. When you think of Mark Holmes, you think opinionated, you think bait. And both were true to form in some ways, but very different in others. It was a pleasure. I met Mark at his deeping syndicate, and I met Oz at Farnham Flint, so backing onto Burfield. So it was good. I get to travel the country, see the anglers in situ, and shoot the breeze for an hour and a half. So
Holmesy's someone that years ago when I worked at Corda, so it is literally years ago now, but he was someone that I always had arguments with on the internet, because I'm very opinionated, he's very opinionated, and because we had Jimmy and Rich, or both, they'd worked with him for years. I then worked with Jimmy and Rich. He would always pipe up to them about things I'd said or done, and I would do the same, vice versa. So me and Holmesy had years of internet beef, I suppose you call it. But Holmesy's actually, as much as when I was younger, my opinion of him was certainly not the same opinion that I have now. He's really funny, isn't he? He's a big character.
Yeah.
Like you say, he's got a lot to say, which I think that's good. I like that, and so I'm a bit like that.
He was a perfect person to interview, because you can just set a seed going and he'll run with it. And there were a few wry smiles that crept across his face. He knows what he's doing. Do you know what I mean? It's not an act. And I've written my intro piece. This will be in a Carpology mag in a few months' time as we're recording. And I wrote in my intro that it isn't an act. It's not fake with Holmesy. You can't fake it. You can't fake his opinions. But he knows what he's doing, and he's mellowed. He's had a heart attack. He's got type 2 diabetes. He has, and he's happy for people to know that. But I think that just puts a different, perspective on your life. And so he sat there, he reclined in his chair, and he had a wry smile on his face, and he knows what buttons he pushes with other anglers. So yeah, I can imagine you 2 sparring though back in the day.
Very much so. Like you say, everything Holmesy does it's all very in your face, isn't it? I've seen him at carp shows, and it's everything he does. You have to have an opinion on it, and you either like it or hate it. I think with Holmesy, because of the way he puts things across, he sort of tells you how it is. That's his opinion, but he's telling you it is almost as fact, despite it being an opinion. And I think, like I say, he's responsible for a lot more of the things that, like at Corda, Jimmy and Rich were full of these really funny sayings. I never knew that they were all Holmesyisms or whatever. They all came from him. I used to find myself saying them, little catchphrases and stuff. And they all come from Holmesy. But he is like, when you see the person I used to interact with on the internet compared to the person that I see them talking to at a carp show, is very different.
He might say the same about you.
He probably would, he probably would. He would definitely have an opinion. If I have my opinions on him, he will definitely have. He actually said to me once that I remind him of himself, which I didn't know to take as a compliment or an insult, but I have actually asked Rich several times to get Holmes on for the record because he's a great candidate for an interview.
Perfect.
Like you say, sit down with him, ask him the questions, feed him topics to talk about, and he'll do just that, won't he? In a quite a unique way, I think. It's actually quite hard to find people like that. There aren't too many of them, which is probably a good thing, I suppose, in reality. But people like him are great to have.
Yeah, absolutely. And Oz was the same as well. Very different, very much more relaxed, chilled out. His sort of surfer's van was in the car park. He likes other things. He's keenly aware that fishing can burn you out. He's keenly aware of the mental side of fishing, yet he's still laser focused when he's down at the lake. And when I walked into Oz's swim on Farnham Flint, Lee Morris happened to be in there as well, who's I think had a bit of success on Farnham. It was the first time I'd been to Farnham. Lovely to see the venue. But the swim was big, but Oz's footprint was tiny. He was under a little low pro brolly. He had a quiver. When was the last time you saw an angler with a quiver? He had 2 throwing sticks. He had a spod rod out, but he said he doesn't really use the spod rod unless he has to. Everything was there for a reason. And I thought that, for a man who's retired from his main job, from firefighting, he could take the kitchen sink. He still does, and he's still got that passion. He's still sitting there hunched under this low-slung brolly. He's got a lovely dog called Percy who was next to him.
His dog's lovely.
Yeah. And it was a lovely scene. The wind was blowing in, the sun was shining. As we've had, as we record, we've had 2 weeks of sunshine, and he can tell a story as good as anyone, can't he?
Yeah. Was he catching them as well? He catches a lot of carp out of Flint.
At the time, I don't think on that session he had, and he's chasing 3 more, and he's at that stage where he's getting repeats, and I think he's got 3 more that he wants to tick off, and he's not quite got itchy feet, but I think he's probably ready to move to the next one.
I get the same impression. Like obviously, I walk past him, or have done the last couple of years. But when I'm fishing Burfield, I walk past him quite a lot. Often pop in to see him, and you can tell now that he's at the stage where he's like, just want to catch these carp and go. Because as much as Flint is a great lake, full of great carp, any lake, you get bored of it once you've been through the stock, once you've been to the same place time and time again. The novelty wears off, doesn't it? And it doesn't matter how good a lake it is. When you get to that position or that part in the timeline where really you just need 1 of 2, 1 of 3 to call it quits. It's quite a hard place to be. I've been in them positions over the years, and you start to go fishing because you have to go more than because you really want to go. Whereas when you start somewhere new, you can't wait to go there. Everything is new. The carp are all new. It's not the same when you're a few years deep. Most of the carp under your belt, and you're just chasing one. You get that monotonous feeling, and I sense that in Oz now, that he just wants to get done.
Yeah, I think monotony, it's not quite at that point, but yeah, he wants those 3. And I think he was telling me about, and I don't know the fish in Farnham Flint very well at all, but he was saying some of them are a bit difficult to predict. You can't, and he likes that hunter element where he can lay a trap for a specific fish. It sounds like some of the ones he needs remaining don't follow a set pattern, and that's when it's hard.
It needs to be a brummie, really, to catch the pristine, which is obviously the one he wants to catch. I'm sure he mentioned this to you, but it gets caught pretty much exclusively by brummies. So I don't know if he wants to work on his accent or something. It's certainly not his fishing he needs to work on, is it? But for some weird reason, that carp constantly just gets caught by a brummie. If a new one turns up, they're all shitting themselves. They don't even know how good an angler he is. They just hear his voice and think, oh no, it's going to happen again. And it does. I'd love to see him catch that carp though, because he's done what needs to be done to catch it. He's caught all the others. But yeah, they're the positions you do end up in at times.
Yeah, well, and being on Farnham is the first time I've walked around Farnham. I've walked around some of those RDAA waters before. There's just a huge amount of water there. I genuinely didn't realise, probably to my detriment, that Burfield was right behind the swim he was
Quite
in.
literally, yeah.
And he was showing me around its scaffold area, and he was pointing to bits and pieces. And that leads me on to the fact that you've been back on Burfield this spring.
Yes. So end of last year, I was in a position where it dawned on me this year that it was taking a toll on my family life, on my work, everything really. The only thing it wasn't taking a toll on was my fishing, because I was going fishing all the time. And I am a bit of a realist. I understand, you know, I'm not someone that looks back and thinks, oh shit, I've been doing this for all that time and didn't realise. When things start to, I don't get blinkered. I can get blinkered in a sense that I'm willing to push all these things to the side for a period. But the minute that starts to cause, I am aware of it. I'm not so zoned in that I don't see what's happening around me. And I got to the point where I thought, okay, well, if I'm going to have to focus more on work again, because the thing with Burfield is, it always felt to me, and it still does now, feels like the sort of place, if you're going to do it, you have to do it to a certain level, and that means time and effort. They're the two big things. And time, as we all know in carp fishing, is a very, very, very important aspect, especially on a lake like that. One, if you're not there the day that fish gets caught, you're almost guaranteed to be looking at several years till it comes out again. It's not like that on most lakes. So I got to the point where I was like, okay, well, if I'm not going to be able to do this how I think it needs to be done, is there any point doing it at all? And there aren't many lakes I would ever think that about, but I really did there. It was like, what's going to give? Is it going to be my family? Is it going to be work? No, I'm never going to let that happen. Well, it has to be Burfield. So I nearly didn't go back. When it sort of came to crunch time, I was like, no, I've got to rejoin. I was always going to take the ticket, because once you drop the ticket goes. It's one, choosing not to go and not being able to go because you don't have the ticket are very, very different things. But like I say, a big part of me was thinking, no, I'm not going to. But when it came to crunch times, like I say, I took the ticket still. And even then, I was still a bit like, am I going to do this? Or am I going to be able to do this? Do I want to just spend all the fishing time I have got at that lake and feel like I'm not going to catch it? Because that's not, you know, you have to make on a lake like that, you have to make very important decisions. You have to make them quite well if you're ever going to stand a chance. Oh, you're just going to piss in the wind for, I don't want to be that person. But also, I was not willing, when it came down to it, just to stop fishing there. You know, I want to fish that lake. So I made the decision. I kind of had a bit of a reality check, and I thought, well, if you're going to go fishing anywhere, you might as well go there. All the carp I've caught from Burfield, I've always caught weirdly, on my first or second night, despite months and months of pre-baiting, sitting in swims, doing 3-4 nights a week. Despite all that, all the fish I've caught have been right at the start of my trips. When I considered that, I thought, well, to be honest, I could probably, if I wanted to, have fished for 2 nights a week and still caught all the carp I've caught. So yeah, I made the decision to go back, and I'm so glad that I did. Because I'm walking down the tow path 2 weeks, so it's middle of April now. Didn't go last week because I was ill, annoyingly, with wonderful weather. So I didn't go because I was ill. First week of April was my first trip back, and walking down the tow path, bright sunny day, I was so glad. I just had that, as I walked down there, it just hit me, and I thought, you've made the right call here. So yeah, I'm really glad, and I've now just accepted that I'm going to go there whenever I can go there, you know. And if that means missing a week here, missing a week there, I'd rather that than miss it all entirely. So yeah, I've just started going, like I say, just started back, and I'm looking forward to it. You know, it's like you've got to be in it to win it. If I'm not there, I ain't got a chance. If I am there, I have. So.
And is it the same odd faces? Any sort of turnover this year? Have any people dropped their ticket?
It's yes, because so last year they banned the bait boats, and that is a big thing on there. You know, like on any lake, if everyone's used to using a bait boat and you take them away, you immediately feel like something's been taken from you, which it has. But the reality of it is, and I've seen it even on my first trip back, I saw this. So there's one swim in particular that was very popular. So it's an island out in the middle of the lake that people would fish long range from other banks and end up fishing in front of this island. They put swims out on the island, and what that theoretically meant was you should be able to go in there and just flick them out to fish to where you've always had to fish hundreds of yards to get to. That's the reason they put the swim there, to stop the necessity to fish such long range. When we were allowed to fish there, naturally, everybody goes into that swim, and wants to go long range from that. Because you always want to fish where, doesn't matter where you go, you always want to, the far margin always looks a lot better when you're staring across at it. If you go around and stand on that far margin, you end up casting back towards the other margin, and that all of a sudden that margin looks better. And that happened. So that swim in particular, although the area that you'd now been given access to was a good area, it doesn't take long for the carp to be pushed further away. And you wouldn't see fish really that close to that swim. Now that the boats are banned, now that you can't go in that swim and push the carp away, they've come close again. So as much as not having the boats is a big thing, don't get me wrong, it cancels out quite a lot of the swims. It doesn't cancel them out entirely, but it makes fishing them, certainly how people have been used to fishing them, way more difficult, because most people cannot fish past 130 yards with accuracy in any weather. Whereas with a bait boat, you can fish as far as you want really with accuracy. You put your bait, everything becomes easier. I think in turn, the fact there are no boats, yes, it's going to mean there'll be less captures. I have no doubt about that. Disturbance is one thing. You're going to catch less across the year because of that. The pre-baiting becomes harder. The areas in which can be fished becomes less. But at the same time, the carp have a bit more freedom to come close. You might lose an element of range you can fish with a boat, but by losing that, the fish just come back towards you anyway. So don't think it's the end of the world.
Does it suit you?
I'm not great at long range fishing. I'm not.
Were you good with a bait boat?
Yeah.
Because that's a skill as well, isn't it? Some people think bait boat fishing is easy, but there's a skill to that, isn't there?
Anyone can chuck a rig in a boat, tow it out and drop it. I'm a very meticulous angler in everything I do. Everything is about precision. I consider everything. So yeah, give me a bait boat where I've got an echo sounder, and I still use my line clips. I still use my markers. I don't just rely on a GPS telling me it's in the right place. So yes, with a bait boat, there were things I was able to bring in all the stuff that I could do normally, the things I am good at, but all of a sudden I could do them at ranges that I would never be able to do them at. So for me, it was a big thing, But at the same time, Burfield's the only place I've ever used a boat. It was only for a couple of years. It is what it is. It's just back in the same. You're back in the same boat. Obviously, sitting there last week, you're watching them. You're looking at areas, you're thinking, "Oh, well, hang on." All of a sudden, we ain't fishing out there. We can't get out there. Does it suit me? Yeah, I guess it does. But if I could fish at 150s, 160s comfortably without a boat, it would suit me a lot more. But you just have to rethink what you're doing a little bit. Some of the areas I fished, I didn't need a bait boat anyway. You just use it because everyone else is. Why not? So it doesn't affect me too much. It hasn't made me go all of a sudden everything I was doing before I now can't do. Would I rather still be able to use one on there? Yeah, I would. But I don't think it's the end of the world. And I think there was people that dropped because of it, I'm sure. But that fish, hasn't been caught for a long time now. You're getting on for 4 years. So I think there's part of that. I think there's lots of things that can make people drop a ticket. Some people get tired of the place, and then as soon as you take that away, the money normally goes up. So I think there's lots of things, but there are new members for sure. Daryl's had a ticket he got his ticket back last year, didn't fish. I think he's planning to fish it this year. And again, obviously Daryl's an angler that can fish well at the ranges that most can't. So it will certainly suit him. Apparently Tom Banks is going to fish it as well this year. But whether that's true, I don't know. You hear the odd rumour. But I think there's about 10 new members, something like that. So, which is quite a big turnaround, really. But yeah, same old faces really. From what I've seen, I went back there, same people I always saw.
On the bait boat thing, and this may be a bit of a tangent, I went to the Big One show, and I think you did too, down in Farnborough last month as we record this, early March. I walked around, I went as a punter. Normally I've been working there, so it's quite refreshing to just go around with a mate and just go and look as a punter, see what's on offer. And it's felt to me like the year of the bait boat. It felt like there were a load of sort of 3D printed boilie sprinklers all over for like sprinkling out of it, to sort of get a spread of bait from a bait boat. And every stand, lots of European stands with bait boats. I just commented that to a mate of mine. If this show was dominated by one thing in 2025, it was the year of the bait boat accessory, perhaps. What was your view of the big one? What other shows have you been to?
So I haven't been to the big one for a long time. I used to go to them all with Corder. I always remember the big one being a bit of a not weird show, but it's not a carp show, is it? Let's make that clear. The big one is.
It's not, but it's dominated by carp.
Of course, as everything, but it's not doesn't feel like a carp show. It feels like a fishing show to me. And it still felt like that. It felt a bit smaller to me this year, but whether, I don't know. It just didn't feel as rammed as.
Did you go Saturday or Sunday?
Saturday.
Yeah, I went Sunday, and I heard Saturday was busy early on. Was really busy early on. Sunday, there's different dynamics sometimes Saturday and Sunday.
Thing is as well, like because I haven't been to the big one for a number of years, and because it is such a big show, the carp shows I've been used to going to are smaller, and they are rammed with people because the venue is smaller. I think it might be the fact that the show is just so big. There's probably more people there still. It just doesn't feel like everyone's treading on each other's toes. But it's a good show. I hadn't been to a carp show for a couple of years, and actually the two shows I did, so I did the Essex one, I did a couple of talks there on the Saturday and the Sunday, and I worked with Corder I worked on the Corder stand on the Saturday, which was good.
Back to your roots.
Yeah, so everyone was like, what are you doing here? Tom Rossiter actually asked me to do the show, and I was like, yeah, okay, I'll do the show. So I turn up and I went out drinking on the Friday night. I woke up on the Saturday and I was like, fucking hell, I shouldn't have said I'd do this show. What I shouldn't have done is gone out on the Friday, but I did. Woke up feeling terrible, went up to the show anyway, and then I went over to see Tom. He's like, what are you doing here? And I'm like, what do you mean, what am I doing here? He was like, why are you here, mate? What are you doing? I was like, I'm working on the Corder stands. He was laughing at me. He's like, no, you're not. I was like, hey, you asked me to do it. He went, no, I didn't. I'm like, you did, mate. You asked me to. That's why I'm here now, because you asked me to do it. He was like, I didn't. I got my phone out. I was like, look, can you do the carp show? Yes, mate, of course I will. Brilliant, thanks. So he's done that. And then on the big one show, I said to Ali, my dad wrote a book. My dad's a children's author for people that don't know. And he's wrote a kids' fishing book. Ali's released it, or published it, whatever it's called. So I went there to sign the books and sell the books with Ali at that show. So when I rang Ali on the Friday night, and I was like, what time do you want me there tomorrow? And he's like, what do you mean, mate? I was like, you've taken a piss.
Nobody wants you.
Nah. So he was like, oh, you're coming on? I was like, yeah, I said I'd come. So anyway, I went and did that. But both shows, they're both really good. It was nice to go to a carp show and not have had all the stress of organising all the stuff that is normally needed for me to attend a carp show in recent years with a Cypography stand. But I really enjoyed the shows, always bump into people. I see people at those shows that I've been seeing at shows for a long time. You get the odd bloke, I remember you when you were this big, mate. So, you see familiar faces. I meet people I've never met before. And there were loads of kids at the shows. And it was made a point of, you were sort of thinking it, and then someone would say it, and then you realise, yeah, there's lots of kids here, which is good because we need those kids in fishing. I think kids need fishing now. I've got two boys, and we're all well aware of what's happening with children these days in terms of staring at their phones all the time. And my kids have got an outdoorsy kind of dad. If you haven't, then there's a lot of kids that probably just sit indoors because of that. So yeah, the more kids we see fishing, the better. And the shows were, like I say, the shows were good. I enjoyed it. I actually bought some Realtree kiddies tops for them. Yeah, they love a bit of camo now. So yeah, I bought them the size 3 to 4 and a 5 to 6. And I bought one myself as well. So
stock up on gas canisters. That seems to be
no. I get all my gas from Fish on Tackle. But the shows are good for that, aren't they?
Yeah. You'd have been aware. Speaking of kids coming to the shows, and I agree with you. You working on Ali's stand, then you'd be aware. I don't know when you last saw Ali and his OMC brand at a show, but people are queuing from noon till night to get their picture with him, and a lot of them are young boys and girls, aren't they?
It's crazy. It is crazy. I've always seen Ali's queues. So, you know, Dovey and Spooner and Fairbrass and that, they get it as well. Blair gets it. There's a very select few people in this industry that draw a crowd like that. But it is mental to see it. Like, I've seen Ali having like security teams come down and moving his queues. They're redirecting him. Like, they have to, at the end of the day, there's like a big team meeting to work out what they're going to do on the next day to stop 15 people's stands get blocked by his queue.
Yeah.
But yeah, mate, people just love Ali. You know, they love him, and just like they love Blair and they love Dovey, they love Spooner. You know, but they love to go and talk to these people. And you know, the queue is a joke, mate. It is ridiculous. Like, and it don't stop. It's there all day. It's like you say, dawn till dusk. There's just an army of people of all ages, both sexes. You know, just waiting to see him, wanting to get something signed, say hello. Yeah, it is weird.
Yeah, I mean, we have lost a couple of shows. You know, we've lost like the Northern show and things like that. Do you still think they're an important part of the sort of the scene, for want of a better word?
Yeah, I think they're an important. I think they're an important part of fishing in terms of people being able to come and meet the people they want to come and meet. Because I don't think many people go to the shows these days because they're desperate to buy something. Don't get me wrong, some people do, but I think a lot of the people, they go there because it's a bit of a day out that's fishing related that there aren't that many of. It's not like football where there's always, you could pick a football orientated something to do very quickly and go with your mate or whatever, couldn't you? Fishing, sort of go fishing, or that's it. They're your only real options. Just go fishing or go to a carp show. I think that sort of gives people something to scratch an itch with, I suppose. But yeah, I think they're good for the industry. I think that's actually quite nice to see everybody there as a group, because something I've become more aware of as I've got older is that it isn't that big an industry. It's actually not. There aren't actually that many. It's not as big as it feels big to us. It's microscopic in terms of, you know, the carp fishing industry. Yeah, it's a big industry to those that work in it or whatever, but it's a good play. It's nice to see everyone there. You've all got the same responsibility, which is to keep it going. And when people don't attend the shows, and like, you know, I'm guilty of it myself. The last couple of years, we haven't had a stand at the carp shows. We are going to as of next year. But yeah, everyone being there, everyone having that presence is a good thing. It shows, like, it's a bit of unity, I suppose, isn't it? A bit of, you know, and like I said, people, I think it's nice for people, if they want to be able to go there, say hello, say thank you, ask their questions, maybe grab a bit of kit while they're there, and have a day out. A lot of them go with their wife. You know, you see a lot of very bored-looking women rolling around them shows. But yeah, they're good. They're important. I think no carp shows would be a shame. You know.
Yeah. Away from the shows, back on the bank. Last time we were here around this table, there was a lot of chatter about Waterside. You've got a few trips booked. You've got to book them in advance. Yeah. But you've, as we're recording, not long back from a star-studded trip to Waterside. You brought some heavy hitters from the angling world with you. Yeah. There's a film still in development, I'm sure. But you saw some interesting things. You saw the big comment for us.
Yeah, we did. Yeah. So for anyone that doesn't know, we've been visiting Waterside for the last couple of years. With the idea to create a series of films that has multiple different anglers within it. So we book a slot, we bring up a few anglers, try and get them together. People you don't always see side by side. Obviously, we've been with Dovey and Spooner. That's the natural thing to see. But we've done other things where you'll see anglers together that you don't see normally. Obviously, everyone's excited because you're going to a lake that has a giant carp in it. We've had a couple of trips at a good time of year and been unlucky with the fact that I think the last one we did, the fish got caught a few days before, a week before, and that was its late capture of the year as well. It was caught at a time where it's probably not going to get caught again, and it didn't. One of my best mates actually caught that fish in January. Fair play, big up Logan. But it's quite rare that it gets caught after October and before April. A lot of our trips have been outside of that, the best window. So I've now got some trips booked for the future in the good times. But we went, like the last time we went, we were on the last week of March into April it was. So it felt so different to ones we'd done in March previously. They were horrible. This was much warmer. Something that I've always felt quite aware of in the spring is how different each day is in terms of the fishing, and how the weather plays such a big part in the way that carp act. In March, I think the line between them being in the sleeping mode and in the awake mode that we want them to be in is quite literally a flick of a switch each day. The weather changes a little bit. What they do is different. I think carp very rarely do the same things day in, day out, especially on the bigger lakes. Tiny little changes in wind direction. Like I say, small peaks in troughs in temperatures. They just act differently. Whereas in the summer, for example, when everything's stable, you might see carp in the same weed bed every single. They seem to do the same things with a bit more regularity. And I think in the spring, they're way hard. It highlights to me why in the spring, being extremely mobile and extremely active is the best way to fish, because you can't see something happen one morning and go, I'll tell you what I'll do, I'll move later, and then tomorrow morning they'll do the same thing again. Like I say, on a big lake, you notice it way more. But if you see one and you cast to it in the spring, it's a great way of catching them. If you see one in the morning on one day and you go and cast there the next morning, I bet you don't catch anything, you know. And Waterside was very much like that this trip, because although we had good weather, it changed almost daily. So we'd have a nice day, a bad day, a nice day, a bad day, and the wind was changing. It was such an up and down in terms of the vibe on that trip. When the sun was out, there were fish fizzing, showing, mudding up, sunning themselves. The whole lake felt alive. The next day when the sun wasn't out, the lake felt dead. Felt there was no carp there. We were cold. The next day we've got all the hoodies are off. We're walking around drinking Stella, big smile on your face, looking out of a tree, a 65-pound common there, sunbathing with his friends. The next day, it went cold again, and you sat in your bivvy with your Fortis coat on, going, oh, this is shit. And I think that, and then going back to Burfield and watching what the fish were doing there, again, I just thought this is so typical of spring, happens every year. And that is why the best way to fish in the spring is as reactive as possible, doing everything as quick as possible. But it was a good trip because we saw that, it had its ups and its downs, as every week-long, we did 5 days, but every week-long trip would have. But that was our first real glimpse of what that place could feel like. We were like, imagine if it was here in May. And every day, we're watching them out the trees. Every day there's fish feeding in the edge here, or they're doing this. Rather than, it was all really good. You sort of make your plan, but the next day you're praying for the sun to come back out. Sun doesn't come out, and they don't do what they did the day before. So yeah, it was a good trip. I went with, it was me, Dave Fish, so me, Dave, Scott Lloyd came for a night, he was really ill. Oz came for a night, Stokesy came for 3 nights, I think, and Spooner and Dovey were there. So there was loads of
the 18.
Yeah, we had all sorts going on, which is good. Different characters, different styles of fishing, different this, different that. But the best thing about it all was we saw the fish, and
did it help you piece together any of the jigsaw? Have you come away going, I think I know a bit more about that big common?
I'm already very much set in the way I will fish that place. Doesn't matter what time of year I go there, I'm going to fish 1 or 2 swims. It gets caught most of the time from quite a small area of the lake. That's the carp I want to catch from there. I'm just going to fish there. Even if everything I see is down the other end. Even if I saw the big one down the other end, unless it was eating, I'd still fish up there. Don't get me wrong, if there was no one else down the bottom, I might run down with a rod and try and catch it whilst it was there. But I'm pretty set in stone in what I'm going to do. So I would personally, no, that trip didn't necessarily affect anything, but it certainly felt like I could, all of a sudden you felt like, shit, we really could catch this. Like, he was eating stuff off the surface. They were like bobbing around. It just felt so different. And I actually saw the fish. One thing we did notice, so when my friend caught it in the winter, he caught all of his better fish up one end and the big one. And I think he caught more fish, but he caught less. He caught more fish, but smaller fish down the other end. And whenever we go there, one end of the lake always feels alive with fish. There's always a lot of carp down one end. The top end, where the fish gets caught the most, never feels quite as busy. But the group of fish that my friend, or some of the fish that my friend caught, were clearly part of the same group of big fish that we saw the common with on the first, I think it was the second day it was. We saw, I don't know, 15, 20 carp maybe. They were all good fish. Whereas down the other end, a lot of small fish. When we saw them 2 days later, when the sun came back out and we saw them again, it was the same group of fish. So it seems to me very much like that big un and the big uns in there knock about together. There is a big mirror in there, which we've only ever seen down the bottom end of the lake. We've never seen him at the top end of the lake with the other bigger fish. So it sort of felt like all the big uns, bar that one mirror, sort of hang around together, move as a group. But then the big mirror in there seems to knock around with all the other ones at the other end of the lake. So, you know, on a small lake, you notice those, you see those kind of patterns and stuff. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that they never break that cycle, but they were very much doing that there. And like I say, it was on, I think it was the third day, sorry, it was the fourth day when Davey was leaving. Me and him were fishing at the top end where the common was, where we'd seen the common and where it likes to be caught. He had to go home. And I'd already said to him, when you're going, I'm going to fish. Didn't go in the swim he was in, I went in the one next door. But I went and stood in these snags, which every time I've been there, everyone has kind of always said, oh, it's a bit shallow in them snags, certainly for that fish. And I'd never really had a proper look in there. I'd looked in there, but the water had been murky, so I couldn't really see how deep it was. But I went in there this time and there was a lot of carp in the bush, and I noticed straight away that it was that group of better fish, the same group that I'd seen the first day we saw the big one. And I'm looking at all of them and I'm thinking, right, well, they're all here. I didn't see the common for quite a long time, but I thought I'll just stay here, and hopefully he'll turn up. If he doesn't turn up and doesn't come in this snag, I will learn something from that, because he should do. But sure enough, mate, it was, I don't know, I probably was in there half an hour, and then he came right in under my feet. And I mean, like, if I'd have slipped out the tree, I probably could have landed on his back and he could have swam off with me sitting on the top of him. But I was seeing carp in a hole. I call it a hole. There's always a bit, if you look in snags, there's always one little bit they like to sit in. And generally, it's a bit where the branches are less sparse. Normally with like two branches sort of passing each other, you end up with like a little gap, don't you? I was looking in there, and like I say, these carp were coming in and out. And normally the hole would take about 3 or 4 carp to fill it up. You know, you could always see the floor, you could always see the gravel until 3 or 4 carp were in that hole. When that big common swam through that hole, he filled the whole thing up on his own. And it was quite a remarkable thing to see. I didn't see him for long. I tried to get footage of it on my phone, but where I was in the tree, I was trying to film the fish. Obviously, we're making a film. I was trying to film them, but if I put my glasses over my phone, I couldn't see properly. And if I put my glasses on my eyes, my phone couldn't see properly. So I sort of clocked the common with my glasses on, and I'm scrambling, trying not to fall out the tree at the same time, trying to get some footage of him. Don't know if I've got it. I did have a little look whilst I was at the lake, but hopefully I got a glimpse of him on the phone, but I don't think I did. I think he disappeared. And then sure enough, 5 minutes later, he was just swimming around out in the middle. But he moved so much water as well. Like, as he would swim, these big vortexes and boils just coming up, just where he wasn't breaking the surface, but it looked like he was, just where his body was so big, just like incredible to see.
Yeah. You also saw some interesting things with spawning, pike and frogs. What did you say?
Yeah, so the toads spawned, and the pike spawned. Now, I think lots of people will be aware that when another species of fish spawns in a lake, the carp will go in and eat it. But I don't know if everyone's aware of that. And I don't know, I certainly sat there, we sat there, we knew the pike was spawning. I don't think any of us thought they will eat that within 24 hours. You kind of just went, oh, the pike is spawning there. I certainly didn't think, oh, in the next 24, those carp are going to come and they're going to eat that spawn. But that is what happened. The 2 areas the pike spawned in, they did it for about 24 hours or so. The carp were not there at the time, but 24 hours later, the carp descended on those areas. They were fizzing, showing. Well, I didn't. They did it over me, and they did it over Stokesy. Neither of us caught anything.
So they're preoccupied on the spawn.
Massively, I would say. There is great. The night I had my hook baits done by the craze, but I don't necessarily think that happened whilst the carp were there. When I reeled in the morning, hook bait was gone. But I think, knowing what I know about craze, I would have said, whilst the carp were there, the hook baits probably were still there. It was only when they left, because they disappeared about 4 in the morning. I was up all that night, liners, bleeps, this, that, the other. The carp just descended on me. And they did the same to Tom in the day. But yeah, we didn't catch anything. Like,
do you think then it's almost useless information, or do you think you can use the spawning locations of other fish to help you catch carp?
This is the thing, like, it's never easy to catch carp when they are preoccupied on something else. You know, just catching carp in the autumn when you find them fizzing like crazy. Don't just cast into the bubbles and catch them. Sometimes, but you can do a lot of casting at bubblers and not catching them. Whereas just casting at showing fish in the spring, they seem a lot easier to catch than. I put it this way: I think casting at carp, eating pike spawn, will be a damn sight harder to catch than casting at carp that aren't eating pike spawn. So I don't think it's useless information that should be ignored. I think it should definitely be considered, because at the end of the day, you're better off fishing amongst them, eating something else, than fishing nowhere near them. But yeah, I don't know. Certainly not useless information, but something worth noting. But I just maybe I wouldn't necessarily have my hopes too high that they're going to turn up, eat a load of pike spawn, and then accidentally eat eat one of your rigs. But interesting to see, and a little reminder that, you know, when that sort of thing does happen, they're never far behind.
Can you use braid at Waterside? And I asked that because of what you might have learnt at Caerphilly with mono.
No, you can't use braid. You've got to use fluoro or mono. There's no rules. I think it's typical £15 minimum, but no braid.
And therefore, and if people haven't listened to this, haven't watched the Caerphilly Castle stuff where you were fishing, it was your rigs in front of the cameras, you had some problems with bouncing leads. Your mono, you were fishing tight to a margin.
Yep.
You were zinging it in, hit the clip, but then the stretch in the mono, because you can't fish braid there, was, and we saw it on camera, was pinging a lead.
Catapulting it up.
Yeah, it really was. Was that a bit of an eye opener for you?
Yeah, it was. I think. So the hindsight's always a wonderful thing. We first saw this with Stokesy fishing he was fishing at the Baston, Envio's place. The one we did with Nige and Tom, the weed and silt underwater we did. I noticed there. And I don't think anyone at the time even clocked it was happening, because it was never mentioned in the film. But when I was proof watching all of that footage, I was like, his leads I thought the footage was sort of tripping out at first. I noticed his leads would bounce, but it wasn't a lot. But what happens is essentially what happens when you use mono in shallow water, and it was shallow again. So Tom was fishing in shallow water, I was also fishing in shallow water. So sub 4 foot. I think Tom was probably in about 4 and I was in about 3. Both at relatively, I wouldn't call it long range, but I think I was at nearly 80 yards, which is long range for underwater film. And I think Tom was about 65. So again, that's quite long range, certainly for underwater filming. But what happens is to fish accurately in front of a camera at those distances, you have to use a bigger lead. If we're using a bigger lead with mono, it creates stretch. If you had a 1 ounce lead, it wouldn't be the same. If you had a 7 ounce lead on, it would be even worse. So the heavier your lead is when you're using mono, the more stretch you're gonna put in the line. And obviously, when you're trying to fish in front of the underwater camera, you're having to drill so hard and sort of straight to get the accuracy. You're putting, when that lead hits the clip, there's a lot of spring in that line. So because it's shallow, the line doesn't have time to release the elasticity that's created by the lead tightening with the line. In 12 foot of water, that wouldn't happen. You know, on the descent, all the stretch would recoil out of the line.
And you get the nice swing back we talk about.
You'll get the swing back. Yeah. Whereas at 80 yards with a 3.5 ounce lead and 12-pound line is what I was using, there's a lot of elasticity in that line. And because it's only 3 foot deep, you hit the clip beyond your spot, the lead touches the floor before the line releases itself of the tension it's now under because of the lead, and then you get this bounce where the line wants to retract and it just lifts the lead off the floor and carries it right out of shot. And that was really surprising. It really was. It made you go, wow. And in the end, what I couldn't do on that shoot was add any line to my clip. So what I would probably naturally have done is just put another few feet on the clip, and then it wouldn't have been so bad. But if I put any more line on the clip, I would go in the trees because I was fishing toe tight to the far margin. And in the end, to eradicate the spring and to stop my lead and rig touching the floor and then just lifting back off the floor and catapulting out, I was having to almost jump into the lake as I hit the clip. So you're trying to counteract because one thing I've seen is the lead can go down. It's actually your hand movement. It takes even if the lead does touch the floor with all that tension in it, it takes the tiniest little hand movement to just loosen the lead's, traction with the floor or whatever, and then boom, it's gone. So yeah, that was a real eye opener.
And you'd have no idea if it wasn't for the underwater cameras. You'd have thought, I've hit that clip, I've zinged it under the trees, that is spot on. But it's bouncing out of shot, isn't it? It's bouncing feet back.
Yeah, 6, I would say. It's probably landing, I'd say the lead lands 6 feet behind, probably, if I had to guess, I'd say the lead was landing about 6 feet past the camera, springing back into shot, and then bouncing at times another 4 feet.
And doing so violently, potentially blunting your hook if it catches anything on the way.
Yeah, very much so. That could easily happen. So it was crazy, but like I say, I think if it was 7 or 8 foot deep, it wouldn't have been the problem that it was.
It's a perfect storm, isn't it? You've got trees that you'll hit. You've got shallow water. You've got 19 wraps. It's quite a unique setting, isn't it?
If I was casting to that exact same spot at 35 yards, it wouldn't have been a problem because I wouldn't have had to put the tension in the line. But if I was casting to that spot with braid, it would have been perfect every time. So it really highlighted how bad a mono is in comparison to a braid for accuracy, and it made life hard, really hard.
Yeah, it's well worth a watch if people listening haven't watched it.
Yeah, we had hundreds of like so many people messaged about that because it's so like I always say, they're the things with underwater that I like discovering, or however you want to put it, or I like to see, because there's so much more to fishing than just, what does this rig do? What does that rig do? They're the things that make people go, what the fuck? And they do us as well. So yeah, it was certainly, that was the main talking point of that film, for sure. And like I say, if it's not too shallow, it's not too big a problem. But if you fish a lake in a situation like that, where, you're casting, to be honest, even if you're just trying to cast tight to snags and things like that, with mono, you're nowhere near as tight as what you think. You're just not, because you can't be. You know, that if you've got stretch in the line when the lead hits the water, you can guarantee you're already several feet back from the bush where your lead's landing. It might feel like when you watch a lead land up against a bush, if that's where it's landing and you've got a monofilament main line, it might land there on the surface, but it's nowhere near there. Nowhere near there once it hits the bottom.
Moving on, big fish waking up after small fish. What have you noticed in that? You've been out on a couple of trips where you've sort of formulated a theory.
Yeah, so it literally just dawned on me at one point. So first of all, we went, myself and Tom went to France. We went to a lake, a guy I met out in Belgium a couple of years ago. He owns a few lakes. He'd got a new lake. Well, I call it it was a new lake for him, but it's actually a very, very old lake. For people that don't know, there's a lot of lakes in France, and they're sort of owned by imagine if you bought a hut down at Southend seafront or on the coast. You get the beach huts. People buy a beach hut. They all own their own little beach hut, and then on a Saturday, everyone goes to their beach hut. A lot of the lakes in France have that same sort of thing. So that someone will own a lake, they'll have all these huts around them, and they are sort of individually leased by people. So this family of French people will spend 150 quid a year or whatever for their slot. That was what this lake was for a number of years. Really, really old carp, really snaggy lake, and all the way around it, these huts. So quite an interesting place. But we went there in, I think it was February. I'm sure it was February. It was cold, put it this way. It was -6 at night, and I think for the first couple of nights. But there's a lot of big carp in that lake and not a lot of small carp. But all the carp that we saw feed and caught were small. And there were one spot we fished. We faced the camera more into the back of the snags, and that shot had carp in the background of it almost constantly. So normally when you sit behind a screen watching an underwater camera, you see the spot, and behind it you just see water, and you're waiting for carp to appear. This was like we'd put it in a bath full of carp. They were there all the time. We couldn't get them to eat maggots. It was like they were existing. They were there, feet away, and we couldn't get them to eat. All of the spots that we fished really did have quite a lot of traffic in terms of fish swimming past. And if they weren't swimming past the cameras, because we were snag fishing, we knew that those sets of snag were pretty much infested with carp. And it was odd at the time that it was only the smallest fish in the lake, quite literally ones he'd put in, that were eating. And we sort of went home from that trip. Like I say, we did catch some, but nothing big. And there's a lot more big carp. Like I say, there's a lot more big carp than small carp. And we sort of came home from that trip a bit like, why did that happen, you know? Then I went to, we made an underwater film with some Cypography members. And I noticed it there that the smallest carp, early in the day, it was nice sunny days, early in the day, the smallest carp were up and in the up and sort of doing what you'd expect all the carp to be doing, and then 4 or 5 hours would pass, and then the other ones would start to do it. And obviously, this was off the back. This is sort of 2 trips back to back, only a few weeks apart, and it just made me think like these bigger fish are taking longer to warm up. You know, the sun is having an effect on them, but I'm convinced that the smaller, and it makes total sense, they're cold-blooded. There's a lot more carp to wake up when it's a big one than when they're small. And I think the 2 trips back to back, seeing what we saw both times, just made me go, there has to be something in this. And I'm convinced there is. Someone might say I'm wrong and it's not true, but I don't think that's the case. I think at that pivotal time of year where every degree in temperature, surface area of the fish that needs to warm up to wake up, that is how they work. To me, it makes total sense that the bigger ones are just going to be, even if it's just hours or days away in terms of that happening, I'm convinced that like I say, the smaller ones are more affected by, because we were getting sun and that in France, and those little ones were just, they can't be coincidence to me, that it can't be.
So you could potentially, if you're trying to single out the bigger fish, you could, and you might think that the bigger fish you're going to get bite time later in the day.
Potentially, I'm not saying it will ever be that simple. You know, like my friend Logan, he caught that waterside fish in January, a day after the whole lake defrosted. You know, big carp get caught in the cold. I'm not disputing that for a second. I just think, I think very much that I noticed something happening on them, both of those trips back to back, where just how willing they were to look active, feel active, do things like sunbathe. There can't be another reason why it would take. They should just all do it at the same time if it wasn't taking them that little bit longer to be affected by it. And like I say, I'm convinced now. Someone like Simon Scott would probably, I could ring him now and say, would that make sense to you? And I'm sure he would say yes. But it's not something I've ever considered before until I've sat there at those two trips. And, you see things, when you stare at stuff for hours and hours and hours on end, it's not just in your head. You're not just thinking it, you're like watching it and seeing it. And like I say, I'm not one for crazy theories, but I think it just, when you sort of sit there and think about it, to me it makes a bit of sense. And I've heard people in the past say, yeah, they're talking about real big carp. Yeah, there's a lot bigger, a lot more fish to warm up, a lot more fish to. And I kind of never really thought of it beyond them just saying something. But yeah, like I say, I'm convinced at that time of year when I can't be like I say, those carp that we saw, the big ones. When I say they were existing, what I mean by that is like, that is all they were doing. They were alive, they were there, but they were completely shut down. And I think that's because they're big pieces of flesh, they're cold-blooded. And that's what happens to them, And I think the smaller ones, they wake up a bit quicker. I'm convinced.
You put out some really interesting little reels I've noticed on Instagram lately, almost as though you're using your back catalogue of footage to draw some wider conclusions. One I saw, Scott Lloyd really liked it. I saw that he reposted it, was the maggots one. Maggots moving underwater. Because I think we've done underwater footage of maggots has been done before, and there has been a sort of sweeping consensus that maggots don't move as much as you think they do, and that's now perceived logic, perceived wisdom. You did something quite interesting with footage to back it up on maggots.
So I look at so it's a question we've been asked a lot. It's something the first time we did it, first time we filmed underwater with maggots, it was something we were like, oh, be interested to see what happens. Of course it's interesting, because it's a question that people always ask. What do they do when they go on the bottom? And it's only over sort of doing, the more you do something, you might form an opinion the first time around. You think, that's what they do. Then you do it at a different lake on a different spot. And the conclusion I'm now pretty much set in stone with is the more up and down the spot is, and so by that I mean, let's take flat sand. So if you took a flat sandy gravel spot and you took a stony gravel spot, so both gravel, both the easiest surface for a maggot to crawl across because it's hard. The gravel spot that has the big stones in it, the maggots travel, but they travel much slower because they can't climb up and over. So they get sort of stuck in the gaps between the stones. We fished a rubbing spot once, which for anyone that doesn't know what a rubbing spot would typically look like, it's basically where the floor gets cratered out, and often in the middle of that crater, there will be a large rock, piece of wood, a tyre, something the carp rub against. And over a long period of time, lots of fish repeatedly rubbing against it, it bores out a hole around the object in the middle. And you end up with a crater in the floor, quite often, like I say, with something in the middle of that. when we filmed with Stokesy, we fished one of those areas. They're never, in my opinion, they've never been good for actually catching carp. But we fished one anyway. It's one of the best sort of presentable spots we had in that swim at Orchid. And all the maggots made their way down basically and ended up surrounding that rock in the middle of the spot. They can't really climb or wriggle up out the spots. They all go down with the gradient of the floor, and they end up around that boulder. And we ended up with this big pocket of maggots. On other areas we fished, like I say, a typical gravel spot, you can tell they're moving, but they don't ever really seem to disappear. They're just, you know they're moving because you see one wriggle, you clock where there was a maggot and now there isn't, but they never leave shot. When we filmed in France, myself and Stokesy the other week, one of the spots was fine, I wouldn't call it sand, but it was very, very fine stone. And they were disappearing from there in a matter of hours. So you could put handfuls of maggots down. The spot would be carpeted with them. And before it even got dark, bearing in mind in the winter, that's not that long, they would pretty much all be gone. And then in the morning, we would turn the cameras on, and you would notice that sandy spot has actually got dirt kicked onto it, because the maggots are going from the center of the spot on the cleanest ground. They're wriggling until they hit the weed surrounding the spot, or the chod and stuff like that around it. And then the carp come in at night. They feed with their heads in the weed, and they kick all the shit back onto the spot. So I think what dictates more than anything what maggots do, there are two things. One is the gradient. If the spot is considerably sloping, they'll work their way down it. If it's sloping and sandy, like this spot that I was just talking about was, they work their way down it, and they do it much quicker. And
so it's spot dependent, isn't it?
Massively, yeah, massively. Haven't done it in silt yet. I don't think we've put maggots in silt. No, we haven't. But certainly on hard ground, yeah. If you've got a sandy spot that's sloping downwards, your maggots are gone, or certainly gone downwards, within a matter of hours. If you're fishing a spot that is sloping towards the middle from every angle, within a number of hours, all your maggots are going to be at the lowest point. And if you're baiting the top of a gravel bar, for example, if you're not rebaiting constantly, your maggots will all end up eventually at the bottom of that bar, and your rigs will be on top. In Wales, I fished with suffocated maggots, and they stayed put the whole time, like you would want them to. That then made me start to wonder if one of the reasons casters are supposed to be so good. I've never used casters a great deal. I don't doubt that the crunch thing and that will have its effect. I think sound is quite a big thing in terms of carp. Certainly numbers of. I think if a carp hears another carp crunching away at something, that's a big attraction thing. But yeah, I wonder if maybe certainly one of the best things about casters, because anyone that uses both will say caster is the best. Whether that has its effect, I don't believe, having looked at the maggots like I do, that whole movement thing is anywhere near as. I'd be surprised if a carp, knowing that their eyesight and that is dramatically worse in the winter, I'd be surprised if that little wiggling maggot is enough to stop them in their tracks. Like, I don't know. I think the fact that they end up disappearing, I can't, like I say, I've watched them, and I'm not sold on the fact that carp, people always mention that, the way worms wriggle like crazy. Maggots, they move, but you have to really stare at them to see them move. But they do disappear. And like I say, if you want your bait to stay on the spot, I think casters or suffocated maggot are by far your best choice, because they're going to go otherwise.
Last time we were sitting around this table, and it was a few months ago now, we were talking about fish ponds and keeping fish, and Rich was stocking fish into childhood haunts, and you had a bit of a bittersweet tale about your own fish keeping. Yep. Have we got an update from you?
Yes, I went out there 3 weeks ago. basically all the Canadian. It's full of Canadian, my pond. It all broken and come to the surface. It'd been like that all winter. I kind of left it like that as well, just because I thought in the back of mine it gives the fish somewhere to hide in case the otter comes back. But I went out there the other day and I was like, I need to clear all this out now. It's just going to rot in the pond. So I cleared it all out, found loads of newts, which is cool. Loads and loads of newts. And I found quite a lot of fry as well. They're tiny as well. They're smaller than I thought they would be. But yeah, I found lots of fry. So my pond, despite being decimated by otters, has life left in it yet. And there is still a chance. Like I say, I did have some that were probably hand size. There is a chance some of them have survived, the otters. But I'm not holding out much hope. But yeah, loads of little babies in there. Dave actually found, when I think the first time I'd really started to pay attention to the pond, hadn't seen any fish. I was going down there looking, I didn't see any. Dave then ran me, he was like, I found the fish in the pond, but it's dying. It's only a little one. And I was like, oh, you're joking. I was thinking, I'm going to get a fish kill now and all of the fry are going to die. So we found this little mirror, I don't know, he was probably 3 inches long, 2 inches long. And he was, I don't know what was up with him, but he was just on his side. He was fucked, basically. He didn't look good. Anyway, so we had a look at him, chucked him back in the pond, and we was like, is what it is, and he just sort of floated off onto his side. Weeks later, when I cleared the pond out, took all the weed out, I found the same fish, right? I found him again, come out in the net. And I was like, oh, it's him. Anyway, I threw him back in the water and he'd done exactly the same thing. He just floated down onto his side again. And I was a bit like, oh, I thought he was going to swim off. So I thought he should have died weeks ago. I'll just chuck him back in the pond.
It's just how he swims.
And I thought, shit, I feel like really I need to knock him on the head because I think he's just, I think he's rolling around on the bottom of the pond on his side for weeks on end, the poor thing, yeah. But yeah, I've got babies in the pond, which I'm delighted about, to be fair.
Are you going to manage them? Are you going to let nature take its course for the next few weeks? What would you do?
Oh, there's a heron out there now, I think, wasn't there, Dave? Dave said, oh, there's a heron on the pond, so... Yeah, I'll just let the pond do its thing. It's all starting to grow. All the reeds and stuff are coming up now. The weed will grow again soon, and I'm going to fence it this year. I will fence it. I'm not too worried about fencing it now. Like I say, it's full of fry. They'll be fine if the otter does come back. If the heron spends too much time out there, maybe not. But yeah, like that. Yeah, I will. They're my babies in a way. You know, quite literally, they are my babies now. That's all I've got left, baby carp. So. Yeah, I can't have an otter on there again next winter, so I will definitely fence it. But we're, like I say, it's a good time of year now. Dave, I think, went out there a couple of days ago and he saw a big group of them swimming around. I haven't actually seen them looking in the water yet, but there is life left in the pond. So.
And what's in store for life at Cypography in the next few weeks? Mid-April as we record. What are you excited about coming up?
So we were supposed to do an underwater with Jerry Hammond at Brook Lake. That's been cancelled, and I've had an idea for a film for ages. It was a bit of an out there one, but I was like, imagine making a film where you have to, if you don't catch anything, you don't get to eat. So you know, like Survivor, like the survival programs and that you do. Yeah, I love them programs. I think they're great. And I was like, imagine if we done something like that. So we go fishing, we go out to France. We've got no food, we've got no stoves, we've got no bed chairs, nothing. We literally go to survival. You know, imagine if you made, if ITV done it, that's what they would do. They would take away this, they would take away that.
So it's not a game show. It's a bit more serious than some of the frivolous YouTube videos we might have seen.
Yeah. So basically, I'm going to go fishing with Finn end of this month. He's the perfect person. He knows how to make snares. He knows how to. I could survive outside, but Finn. That's way more him than it is me. So we're going to go army surplus shop, get a couple of army rucksacks, the army sleeping bags, tarpaulin, a little flint, all that sort of stuff. We're going to take 4 rods, a boat, and we're going to go out to France, and we're going to see how long we can survive without all of the luxury that we have as anglers nowadays. And unless we catch, we're not going to kill the carp and eat them, but we will simulate that. So catch a carp, you get a meal, that kind of thing. and see, and just see how long we last. We argue a lot as well, me and Finn. So once hunger sets in,
I can picture you losing one at the net and that almost leading to tears.
There you go. So we're going to go to a massive lake in France. I've been there before a couple of times.
Public lake?
Yeah, public lake. Beautiful place.
Windsurfers, pedlos, that sort of?
No. This is pitch black at night, silence after dark, beautiful pine forest pine forest covered mountains surrounding it. Just beautiful place. It's a big lake, but there's quite a good head of carp in there. And just see, and we're going to do that instead, basically.
So is that coming up? Have you booked?
Yeah, we're going to do that.
Ferry or the tunnel?
I spoke to Finn this morning. He's all good to do it. I'm just waiting on a thumbs up from Rich to make sure he can, rather than leave it all up to Dave to film everything on his own. That kind of thing. That I want to be able to just worry about fishing, eating, and that is all we're gonna need to worry about.
What's the longest you've gone on the bank without eating?
Probably about 4 hours. So no.
It's easy now in this age of Deliveroo and apps and phones, isn't it? But have you ever done a session where you've forgotten
loads of
something?
times. I've done loads of stupid things over the year where I go for a day session. I think, I won't take any food or drink because my kit will be lighter. And then you walk to the swim, or you end up fishing by the car or something anyway. And then you sit there and think, right, I've got fucking 12 hours now with nothing to eat. So I haven't been fishing, not eating for much more than about 12 hours very often. And hopefully I won't have to this time, but hopefully we'll just get there. They'll be jumping everywhere. But yeah, I think it'd be quite fun to do. I think it'd be funny. I think it'd be an interesting film for people to watch. And I actually think it'd be quite, I like to do things. I'd like to try and do things that are just a bit different sometimes, and it's so easy to fall into the same things of making the same kind of film. It's so easy to do that. But sometimes you need to just go, and I've kept on about doing this, and I don't want it to become something that I've said we should do and never do. We might do it. It might be really good. It might be the worst thing I ever do, but it'll be a bit different. It should be a good laugh. And Finn's responsibility will be keeping me alive, and my responsibility will probably be catching us the fish. So,
were you in the Scouts or anything like that as a kid?
Nah. But I'm not. Like I say, I'm not too fragile. I spent a lot of time outside. I'll be all right as long as we can catch some carp. We'll be okay. I don't know if I'd be able. I can't rub sticks together and start a fire though.
Finn will save you on that.
Almost certainly will be able to do that. So,
away from that sort of survival series, then anything a bit more normal that's coming up?
Yeah, so we've got quite a lot of underwater booked for this year, as you can imagine. We've got some interesting guests for that. If all goes to plan, we should have. I think we've got Scott Lloyd in May, Ali in June, Laney in July, Blair in August, and I think the Jerry one in September. We've started to do, the Cypography members among the people listening to this will realise that we've started to do a bit more of the old for the record endgame type stuff. We've got a really cool series with Simon Scott going at the minute, talking about his raspberry fishing. And I always used to hear stories of how good his raspberry slideshow was. It was always renowned as like the best fishing slideshow there ever was, or whatever. So Scott is such a good storyteller. Like, he's so passionate, isn't he? He's so listenable. So we're doing a lot more of that again now. One thing that became quite clear to us, and certainly to me, was that just doing, although we never were going to do just underwater, I think a lot of people thought that. They took from it that was all we would do. And that made a lot of people say, we don't want that to be all you're going to do. But the plan, I'll be honest, the plan wasn't to do for the record, endgame and that regularly. We would always do them, but they're so popular for us. We love doing them. Our members love them. And and that's the thing with us. It's like, if you are a Cypography member and you have something to say, then say it, because we will listen. If we had overwhelming numbers of people saying, please never make another for the record again, we wouldn't do them. if we had that being said about underwater, we wouldn't do them. And, you know, if people tell us what they want, we will listen. So we have done, and are going to. So we've got like a nice mix at the minute, really. Lots of underwater stuff, yes, because that is still, you know, we're not just turning everything on its head. People love them. But there's a lot of people that miss some of the old classic, which for us is actually the more simple, sort of maybe more heartfelt stuff. Love big carp stories, love interviews with people, you know, they're nice things to do. So we can do lots more of them.
You went out not that long ago with some members. You went fishing with them.
Yeah.
Did that
Yes.
anything from that surprise you? Anything from that like confirm what you thought? What was that like?
I wouldn't say anything surprised me. It was nice. No, it was good though. It surprised me how it was really fucking tough. That was, mate. Honestly, I was broken after that. Broken after that shoot because.
Tough fishing.
No, not even, mate. Yeah, okay. Well, the fishing wasn't easy, but 5 days filming. Okay, let's take a normal underwater shoot, right? 5 days filming, blah, blah, blah. You go there, you set all the cameras up, matey turns up on day one with you, matey being the angler, rods go out, then the next day, it sort of gets a bit more plain sailing each day. If I get tired, I'm like, I'm going to go sleep in the chair. If the angler gets tired, they go to sleep. If Dave gets tired, he goes to sleep. You're not hosting, are you? You know, you're not hosting. This was like an underwater shoot where every single day you have to start with new anglers. So you have to go through the whole process, the whole learning process of where's the spot, how do we get to the spot. And what we probably did wrong is we should have invited everyone down for the week. Everyone turn up at the same time on the Monday. And then each day they get to fish in front of the underwater cameras on a cycle. Whereas what we did was we invited 2 anglers down each day.
I assumed you'd have done it the former.
Yeah. No. So I was like, because I thought the best thing to do is we've got 2 cameras. Each day in the morning, anglers turn up, they fish through the day, and then after dark, they go. That means after dark, we can reset, recharge all the batteries, chill out, blah, blah, blah. I then we were supposed to do this at Wateride on Heron Lake, where we have filmed in the past, got a lovely lodge there. Everything would have been a little bit easier if that was the case. You know, oven and all that. That flooded 2 or 3 days before we were supposed to do the shoot. So I messaged everyone. I was like, do you want to cancel this or do you want to go ahead with it? And obviously they were all like, no, let's still go ahead with it. If you can find somewhere else, let's do it. We know we'd like to come. You know, a lot of them, they're not desperate to catch a fish in front of the cameras. They just want to see how it all works, come have a chat, which suits us fine. Like I say, as long as they're happy, we're happy. That shoot was more about making sure that the people coming were aware of the fact that we're going to have to change the venue. And if you still wanted to come, you still could. So that's what happened. I think the day we got there, I decided to say to people, if you want to come down the night before, you can do. Because I thought, actually, it can be a bit of a muck about getting the rods out for the first time. And if you're meeting someone at first light, by the time you've said hello, they've got all themselves sorted and rods on the spot. You probably lost 3 hours or something in the morning. So we got them to come down at night. Most of them did. And I said, don't come any later than 10 o'clock. So what would happen is, first night, people turn up 8, 9 o'clock at night. We've been there all day setting everything up. So then I'm talking, you know, you're saying hello, you're doing your bit, meeting people, going to bed at midnight. Then you're getting up in the morning, 5:30, 6 o'clock or whatever. They then fish for the day. When that day is over, and you're still, like I say, you're hosting. It's not like you couldn't get tired and go and chill. It's like it's constant because you're with people that have travelled down to do this thing. You can't leave them. You can't just leave them. Then you get to the end of the day, they have all their rods in, cook dinner for everyone, cooking them breakfast. I hate cooking food for people and stuff as well. Like when it's regimented like that and you've all of a sudden, it feels like a chore. But so I'm making breakfast, sitting, talking with them all day, gets to the end of the day, say goodbye to them fellas. 2 more then turn up. And then it's like, shit. So then you're saying hello, meeting them, go to bed again at midnight, might drink a bottle of wine with one of them or whatever. And it was, mate, there was no downtime, and everyone that came was a legend. The people we had, like, it was great. You know, we didn't have any problems on that front. Everyone was sound. Everyone was good to sit and talk to. But just the fact that I felt like I was so responsible for making sure everything was okay. Are you hungry? Are you this? Are you that? No downtime, not even for a second. By the end, I was like, on day 2 or 3, I was just constantly yawning. It get to like nearly dark, and I just can't stop yawning. So tired. So yeah, aside from how much of a toll, and it sounds ridiculous to say that that's how tiring it was, but it really was. Aside from that, it was a really good week. Like I say, it was nice to have the members now, nice to sit and talk to them. What do you think? Some of them have been members for a long time, some not as long. But yeah, lots of them have been members for a long time. They loved it. We all had a good laugh. Didn't catch carp like we wanted to catch, but like I say, it wasn't the end of the world that we didn't catch anything. We had a good time, and we'll do it again. I sort of said to them all, we'll invite you all back, because we want them to. One lad nearly caught one, but other than that, it was on the fishing front. It was a bit dire, you know.
And will we see that film?
Yeah, we'll put it. Yeah, for sure, definitely, we'll put it together. Like I say, bit of a mixed bag in terms of how we had anglers that probably don't go that often, and then we had real out and out hardened big carp anglers as well. So we had a nice mixture of people. But like I say, all really nice blokes. It was just quite nice to do it. I got quite a lot of like self-satisfaction out of that. I was like, oh, this is cool. It was a nice feeling to have
a community feel. I
yeah,
guess.
it did. That's what I'm saying. Yeah, it did, and it was nice. It was nice to just do again. It's nice to do something different you don't do all the time. It's just a shame, like I say, we didn't catch more carp, but yeah, it was good. It was.
Is there anything you filmed in the last year, 18 months, that's on the cusp of being edited and ready to come out?
Yeah, so the first load of Waterside films will come out, I think is it next week? I think it's next week. Yeah, I think so, next week. So they'll probably already be out by the time this is out. They'll probably already be out. Like I say, we're mid-April now. So yeah, we've got the Waterside. I think we've got 3 Waterside films that will come out back to back. And we've got an underwater from last year we did with James Armstrong.
I met you on the bank there, didn't I? Stanek.
Oh, shit, of course
wasn't
you
it?
did.
Yeah, I was doing stuff for Angling Times, and it seems a long time ago. It's probably this time last year, May last year.
It does, yeah.
It
was.
Yeah, fishing in the edge.
Yeah. And I'll tell you something that actually is different. But I'm going. I was going to say back on the tools is probably I'm starting to do a lot of editing again now. I've missed it so much over the last few years. I love it.
So a lot of filmmakers would say that's the hardest bit, is editing, is collating the footage and condensing it down. But it's also arguably the most satisfying bit.
Yeah, it is. Collating the footage is hard if you didn't shoot it and have every single shot and scene already built in your head. Does that make sense?
Yeah, if you shot it knowing how you think the end product's going to be, then I think it becomes a much more satisfying process.
Yes, it's much easier. Like, don't be wrong. If I'm not saying I want to have every single film put in front of me, but like some of the underwater stuff, like I say, I miss editing. I'm a very creative person. That's what I like to do. I like design, I like editing, I like filming. But over the last 4 or 5 years, I've done a lot more running the business, because that's what Cypography is. You know, it's a business that works with lots of people. I had to step away from a lot of the editing because you can't do everything at once, and you can't do everything yourself. But Craig, who works with us now, he's probably way better at that kind of running the business side of stuff than I am, and he probably enjoys it a bit more. So he's going to do more of that, and therefore I can do more editing, which I'm really pleased about, because, like I say, I love doing it, and I have missed it. And I listened to Carl's podcast, and I've heard him ask loads of times, when are you going to get someone else to edit your stuff? And I've heard him say, oh no, I couldn't, you know. And I remember years ago feeling like that. And then you sort of step away from it and you think, oh, it's actually quite nice not to have to worry about that. But then another year or so passes and you think, oh, I miss doing that. So yeah, I'm going to do a lot more editing again now, which is something I'm pleased about, I suppose, because like I say, I do miss it. And I think if you're out on the shoot, filming the shoot, playing that director role, knowing where this wants to go, knowing where that wants to go, I think it's good for the film as well to do that. So yeah, I'm going to be editing more at Burfield, hopefully.
Sounds good. Well, I think that probably wraps it up for this month, and hopefully it won't be 3 months until our next one.
No, we're going to book some dates in, aren't we? Because we definitely said it was supposed. I thought this was only a month since the last one, but apparently it was 3. So
might feel like it, but yeah, it has been 3. So hopefully we'll stick to our schedule.
Yeah, we'll book some more dates in now.